It has finally happened. Donovan Solano signs a deal with the Seattle Mariners. It's not a huge deal, but it is something. Let's break it down right now and see what's coming next for your Seattle Mariners. Donovan Solano, a utility player that used to play for the San Diego Padres, signs with the Mariners on a 1-year, $3.5 million deal. Solano is a guy that has played in the MLB for a long time. He's definitely your veteran that has played all over the field. He plays primarily first base, third base, second base, but really one of those guys that comes in a very Dylan Moore-esque role where he's not going to essentially be a starting caliber player for the Mariners. He should play definitely all over the place, but shouldn't necessarily get a ton of run. But knowing the Mariners and knowing the type of players that they sign, he might get a lot of playing time, more than he did with the San Diego Padres this past season. Solano is a guy that has been pretty consistent overall throughout his career, a guy that even last year had a really solid year with the San Diego Padres. The Seattle Mariners did have holes at first base, second base, and third base, so bringing in a guy like Solano who can play all of those positions, even if he is not going to be an elite level option as far as hitting goes. Solano this past year playing for the Padres played in 96 games, had an average of 286, an on-base percentage of 343, a slugging percentage of 417, and an OPS of 760. This is definitely solid offensive production, rather it be on a smallish sample size, not playing a regular everyday role for the Padres, as they had a lineup that was very stacked and necessarily didn't need his services every single day in the lineup. Solano is a hitter that isn't going to hit for a lot of power. He did actually have his most home runs in a season this past year for the Padres, hitting 8 home runs, but previous seasons as follows. In 2023, playing for Minnesota, he only hit 5 home runs. Season before, playing for Cincinnati, he hit 4 home runs. And in 2021 with the San Francisco Giants, he also hit 7 home runs. So this is a guy that is going to hit for contact and kind of make things happen for the rest of the lineup. But you're looking at a guy that is really going to be kind of in that role, very similar to even like a Dylan Moore, like I mentioned before, but is definitely a guy that does not have the stolen base chops that Moore has. Dylan Moore this past year had a great year stealing bases. Solano is not a guy that is going to steal a lot of bases at all, doesn't have a lot of speed. So really his main contribution that he will provide to the Mariners offense is going to be positional depth along with contact and getting on base. This is a guy that doesn't really strike out that much. Solano this past season only struck out 65 times. Season before was his highest in his entire kind of recent career at 100. But the seasons before, you look at 2022, struck out 61 times, 58 times, and then in 2020, 39 times. He's a guy that is going to put the bat on the ball and make things happen, but not a guy that is going to really flash anything elite offensively as well. After this move, what's next for the Seattle Mariners? Well, there really isn't a lot, and if you're looking at big impact moves, really the only one I can think of is Ha-Seong Kim, the former also San Diego Padre, who is a Gold Glove premium defender that can play second base or shortstop. He's a guy that is probably out of the Mariners' price range, but has been linked to the Mariners throughout this offseason. He's a guy that would instantly come in and provide elite level offense from what we have had in the past at second base. Granted, he did have a down year this past year, but the year before was really solid offensively, and with his defensive metrics that he has and what he provides at both second base and shortstop, this would be huge for the Seattle Mariners, but like we mentioned earlier, it's very unlikely to happen. Another high-end free agent acquisition that the Mariners have been dreaming about this offseason has been Roki Sasaki, the phenom pitcher from Japan. He has listed his finalists, and the Mariners have not been on that list. Those 3 finalists for Sasaki include the Toronto Blue Jays, the Los Angeles Dodgers, and the San Diego Padres. It wouldn't be surprising to see Sasaki sign with one of the California teams. The Padres and the Dodgers seem to be the 2 main frontrunners that have been the frontrunners throughout this free agency process. If I had to guess where Sasaki goes, the San Diego Padres seem like the most likely destination. They are in desperate need of another starting pitcher to go along with Darvish, Michael King, Dylan Cease. Sasaki would fit perfectly right in next to those guys and would get a lot of run. Ultimately, this move for the Seattle Mariners is at least something, and if you were looking at big flashy moves like a Sasaki, it was really never in the cards to begin with. It was nice to dream about, but now that it has come down to the 3 finalists, we can really move on and set our sights more for a guy like Ha-Sung Kim, like I mentioned before. He is still very unlikely. So ultimately, what happens next with the Seattle Mariners the rest of this offseason? You're looking at signings very similar to Solano. Small deals worth in that same price range as what Solano got. Ha-Sung Kim is definitely the pipe dream at this point. He would fit in perfectly with our needs, and a guy that is honestly right there for the taking if you're the Seattle Mariners. He is in that price range though that really tests the budget constraints of this ownership, so it'll be really interesting to see what happens and if he signs with the Seattle Mariners. Even with the addition of Solano, the Mariners still need to make a few additional moves to really solidify first base, second base, and third base. You are really going to need to get someone who is going to be an everyday starter at one of those positions. You can't just rely on guys like Solano and Dylan Moore, utility players that are very limited offensively, to get the job done. If anything of note happens in this offseason to the Seattle Mariners and we make additional signings, we'll break it down right here on Mariners Uprise. Until then, peace out and go Mariners.